Well, they were at it again today, the Insulate Britain idiots, blocking up all sorts of roads, including the Wandsworth Bridge, Hanger Lane, the Blackwell Tunnel between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m, bringing misery to hundreds of thousands of motorists because they want lots of home improvements to be carried out around the country. So we need to talk about that. I also want to talk about the number of pay rises that have been given to top executives at the BBC. It turns out that the Director General, Tim Davie, he got a 75 grand rise last week, taking his salary to 525,000 a year. He wasn't the only one. A lot of the other fat cats got nice rises of up to 40% as well. This at a time when the BBC is shedding many of its workers. 1,200 lost their jobs recently, but the guys at the top are doing very, very nicely. Who better than to discuss both issues with than social commentator Connor Tomlinson. Good evening, Connor.
Good evening, Kevin. I hope that you can bear an evening without me being in studio with you.
Well, yes, I hope you can bear an evening being at the Tory conference.
Just about, mate.
Just about. Let's talk about Insulate Britain first. They're at it again today, causing untold nightmares for motorists, people trying to get to work, people taking their kids to school, delivery drivers trying to make their deliveries, ambulances trying to get patients to hospital, and yet they were blocked all over London again. And yet again, we see a pretty weak response from the police. When the hell, Connor, are we going to see the police turn up, arrest these people and remand them in custody so they can't go back the next day?
Well, quite tragically, over the last few weeks, police incompetence has been making the headlines. It's pretty astounding that Cressida Dick continues to keep her position with bipartisan support when there's no shortage of corruption, malfeasance, inability to apply the law fairly. And so the people who were dragging the protesters out of the road and doing the police's job for them, all those people deserve medals because you're just working people trying to get to your jobs. And I would have done the same if I was in their position. The only scary thing is the clear misapplication of the law without it being applied equally shows that it's okay to break the law and endanger lives and livelihoods if you're protesting for, quote, the right causes. We saw this with the unilateral application of force at the lockdown protests versus the BLM riots when they were climbing on the cenotaph and doing far worse in the States. It's clearly one rule for them and one rule for us, and it's quite tragic that police have gone away from people's principles of politically impartial policing and towards this ideological motivated application of the law.
Well, we were just watching their footage of angry motorists getting hold of these idiots from Insulate Britain by the scruff of their necks and pulling them out of the road. They cleared the road in about 2 minutes. The big question there is, why can't the police do that?
Well, it's not that police can't do it, it's that they have no desire to do it, and they definitely should do it, because if anyone looks at Insulate Britain, and I've written a fairly extensive uncovering of this for 1828. I know there was a Mail piece today that looked into the founders. The founder is a man named Roger Hallam, who was booted out of Extinction Rebellion, which he helped found, after he said certain people may need to die for democracy to be overthrown and made one fit for purpose. He diminished the Holocaust in a German interview. So the Extinction Rebellion lot distanced himself from him because apparently there's lines that even they won't cross. But that's after he also created Stop Killing Londoners in 2017. And it's before he had a protest stunt at his old university where, by the way, he didn't study climate science by any chance. He studied radical protest movements and compared himself with Martin Luther King and Gandhi. So this is a man who is so vain, he can instantly start apocalyptic protest movements time and time again, gets booted out or they fail. And every time the solution always magically is, oh, I don't have any exact solutions, but if you give Roger Hallam all the power in the world, I'm sure we'll find out when we get there. Yeah. Funnily enough, mate, I don't trust putting you in.
Yeah, exactly. And, while many people clamour for the resignation or the head of Cressida Dick, the Met Chief Police, people want her to go because she's presided over a situation which many feel led to Wayne Couzens, because the police has clearly got a toxic culture and he was part of it. So we're clamouring for her to go, but no one's listening to us. And everybody keeps saying, will, for God's sake, the police do something about this Insulate Britain mob? And all we hear is, oh, well, the law's not strong enough. You know, it's only a minor offence blocking the highway, and we've got to get an injunction. Well, they've got injunctions left, right and centre now. That doesn't seem to have made any difference. Why can't they just arrest them, come up with some charge that's serious, and then remand them in custody? That's what we want to see. There's no deterrent for these people at the moment.
There's also some strange ideological partisanship, because the Supreme Court, before they applied the injunction for Insulate Britain, said it was perfectly okay for Extinction Rebellion to do Amdram in the middle of the highways before. And the police have been very topsy-turvy on that. They allowed them to set up a pink IKEA tea party for ages in the middle of Covent Garden, but then we tried to set up another table. They descended on them like flies on rotten fruit. So I'd say not only is it hypocritical, as you've already pointed out, it's destabilizing not just faith in the fair side of the climate debate from the activists, but also the belief from the British public that the law is going to be applied to them fairly. And if the police want the public to distrust them even further, law-abiding citizens like myself, then they're going to keep acting in this way, and they're not going to win over public support. And when a bunch of crazy left-wing activists like BLM come around and say, "Oh, defund the police," they're going to be pretty scared when the support for that crazy plan goes from single digits to double to over half.
Yes. Let's move on to the BBC. Last week, people were very energised, very angry about the fact that the underperforming Director General, after a year of what you might generously describe as mediocrity, hasn't achieved anything. But after a year of nothingness and mediocrity, he suddenly got a 75% pay rise, up from 470 to 525 grand a year. People very angry with that, saying why was he getting that at a time where 1,200 jobs had just been cut by the BBC, looking for economies. Obviously not when it comes to the top guy's salary. Also, it now transpires that 5 of the BBC's 10-strong executive committee, in other words, the Praetorian Guard that surrounds Tim Davie and the administration of the giant BBC operation, that they all got pay rises as well, sometimes as much as 40%. So it's a nice public sector work if you can get it, Connor.
Well, I don't think it's fair to say he hasn't done anything, because, of course, he did pay June Sarpong, triple six-digit figure for, what, about 3 days a week?
285 grand a year for 3 days a week to do diversity, yeah.
Well, that's definitely not an extortion racket at all, is it? Obviously, they haven't really increased the diversity. Oh, wait, hang on a minute. All of the certain groups, as we said about before, Kevin, not to beat a dead horse, but all the certain groups they want to represent, women are overrepresented in their characters, so are LGBT by population, so are ethnic minorities by population, which is fine if the story calls for it and it's authentic. But when taxpayer money is being squandered on these ideological schemes, which don't have the integrity of art at its core and don't have a bipartisan coverage of the news, and instead packaging the idea that somehow diversity means only diversity of superficial skin color rather than of ideas and being representative of what the country thinks, particularly around Brexit and things like that. It shows the BBC is frankly unfit for purpose. They're taking us for a ride.
Yeah, they take that, as I always say, Connor, they take our money and they divide it up between themselves for 159 quid for your TV license now. So there's this 10-strong executive committee that surround Tim Davie and the administration of the BBC. 5 of them got pretty substantial pay rises. Some of them because they've allegedly been promoted. So they've got sort of slightly different jobs. But 40% pay rises to people already on hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. It's a lot of money, and as I say, feeds into this idea that what the highly paid BBC executives do with our licence fee money is they divide it between themselves and give themselves nice big pay rises.
If they want me to sit around and tell them why they're awful for being straight white men in the office, then hey, I've done a lot more degrading things for less money, so they can give me a call instead. Although I doubt after being on your show, Kevin, the BBC would hire me. I think, as we said before, the BBC needs to live and die on its own merits, and that's why the licence fee deduction is a sort of Damocles that's hanging over their head. Though for a couple of years, it seems to be a bit of an empty threat by the Conservative government. Hopefully, the Dean Dorries backs that up, as we've said before. Yeah. But without a sort of a market force holding the BBC to account, its dwindling viewership doesn't really matter to them. They can keep churning out ideological propaganda and being the vanguard of our moral betterment through the media, as long as they have taxpayer funds. Strip that away, and they've got
then they'd have to make programs that people wanted to watch, so they could get advertising and pay for themselves. They need the commercial imperative. It would help them. Before you go, Connor, you're making a speech up there, aren't you? Something to do with climate change or something?
Yeah, so I did it this morning. I said this morning, about 1 o'clock, with the Adam Smith Institute, and I was on a panel with, I feel really terrible for getting it, former universities minister, first name's Chris, also an Australian trade ambassador. It might be. He was the gentleman who actually said it during the panel. I was the guy who signed on the dotted line that turned net zero by 70% of emissions by 2050 to 100% of emissions net zero by 2050. And all it took was changing the number. And I raised the point of, so you didn't cost it then.
Thanks. Yeah.
Really nice fella, but the detachment is pretty scary.
He's just another politician virtue signalling. Look at me trying to save the world. It really is getting very annoying. What about our pockets? What about our money? Don't forget, all of our fuel bills now, we're paying a climate change levy so that Boris can pursue his green dream while we all go broke. It's getting on my nerves, I'll tell you. Connor, you'll be back in the studio next week. Enjoy the rest of your time in Manchester. And thank you for your time.